I raised my son to be better than me. That was my only goal. Every decision, every sacrifice, every extra shift at the fire station, it was all for Brandon. I wanted him to have the opportunities I never had, to wear a suit instead of turnout gear, to work in an office instead of running into burning buildings. I got my wish, and I lost my son in the process. The day everything changed started like any other Thursday. I was in my garage, rebuilding a carburetor for my '72 Chevy, when Brandon's BMW pulled into the driveway. He didn't come by often anymore, maybe once a month if I was lucky. Usually, it was when he needed something. "Hey, Dad." He stepped out, immaculate in his tailored suit. 27 years old and already a senior analyst at some tech company I could never pronounce correctly. His girlfriend, Sienna, emerged from the passenger side. Designer everything. The kind of woman who looked at my neighborhood like she was touring a zoo. Brandon. I wiped my hands on a rag, leaving grease stains I knew would never come out. "This is a surprise." We were in the area. His eyes swept over my garage, the concrete floor cracked in places, tools hung on pegboard, the lingering smell of motor oil. The same garage where I'd taught him to change a tire when he was 12. Where we'd built a soapbox derby car together when he was 9. He looked at it now like it was a relic from another lifetime. Sienna wrinkled her nose. "Babe, maybe we should just talk out here? I'm wearing Louboutins." "Right." Brandon shifted his weight. "Dad, I wanted to ask you something. We're having a party next month, my promotion celebration. I made VP. Vice President?" My chest swelled despite everything. "Son, that's incredible. I'm so proud." "It's at the Harbor Club," he continued, not quite meeting my eyes. "500 a plate. We've got investors coming, C-suite executives, everyone who matters in the industry." The way he said everyone who matters landed like a fist to my gut. But I pushed through it. "That's great. When is it?" "I'll make sure I'm there." Sienna's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh my God, you're serious?" Brandon's jaw tightened. "Dad, the thing is, I was hoping you could help with the costs. The venue alone is $60,000. And with catering, the band, the photographer we're looking at, close to 200 grand total. $200,000. I made $53,000 a year teaching fire safety courses after I retired. My pension covered my mortgage and not much else. Brandon, I don't have that kind of money, but I can help however I can. Maybe I could. It's fine." His voice was clipped. "I figured as much. I'll handle it, but I'll be there," I said quickly. "I'll wear my good suit, the one from your graduation. I want to celebrate with you." The look that passed between Brandon and Sienna was brief, but I caught it. A whole conversation in a glance. "About that," Brandon said slowly. "This is a really important night for me, for my career. These people investors, board members, they're sophisticated. They're used to a certain level of—" He trailed off, but Sienna had no such reservations. "What Brandon's trying to say is that it's a professional event, very high-level networking. Everyone there will be from his world. Corporate executives, venture capitalists, people who summer in the Hamptons, and I'm just a retired firefighter. I finished for them." "Dad, don't make this harder than it is." Brandon's face flushed. "You don't understand this world. You'd be uncomfortable. The conversations are about market dynamics, IPO strategies, portfolio diversification. What would you even talk about?" "I talk to people every day," I said quietly. "I teach teenagers how to save lives." "Right, but—" Brandon gestured vaguely. "Look, my colleagues know I went to Stanford. They know I did my MBA at Wharton. What they don't know is that my dad is—" He caught himself. "Is what?" The words came out harder than I intended. "Nothing. Forget it." But Sienna, God bless her lack of filter, filled in the blank. Brandon told everyone his father was a fire chief. Department head. Not just a regular firefighter who teaches community classes. The garage felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. "You lied about me?" "I didn't lie. I let them make assumptions." Brandon's voice rose defensively. "Do you know what it's like trying to fit in with these people? They went to boarding schools. Their parents are doctors, lawyers, CEOs. One guy's dad invented a surgical technique. Another girl's mom is a federal judge. And I'm supposed to say my dad drove a truck and ran into burning buildings for 40 grand a year? 38,000 when I started, I said numbly. It went up over time. Jesus, Dad, that's not the point, Brandon exploded. The point is you don't fit into my life anymore. Your life is small. It's ordinary. You live in the same house I grew up in the same neighborhood with the same people. You drive a 20-year-old truck. You rebuild carburetors for fun. That's fine for you. But it's not who I am anymore. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Sienna put a hand on his arm. Babe, let's just go. We'll figure out the money somehow. Brandon ran a hand through his hair. Look, Dad, I appreciate everything you did. I do. But I've moved beyond this. He gestured at my garage, my house, my entire life. I can't bring you to this party. You'll say the wrong thing, wear the wrong thing, be the wrong thing. You'll embarrass me. I stood there, grease still under my fingernails, and watched my son, the boy I'd carried on my shoulders, the teenager I'd stayed up with during exam weeks, the young man whose entire college education I'd paid for with overtime shifts and refinanced mortgages, look at me like I was something to be ashamed of. Get out, I said. Dad, get out of my garage. Get off my property. Don't be dramatic. I said, get out. My voice, trained to be heard over sirens and chaos, echoed off the garage walls. Brandon flinched. Sienna was already backing toward the car. You want to know something? I stepped toward him. I worked 60-hour weeks for years so you could go to that fancy school. I ate ramen for dinner so you could have spending money. I delayed my own retirement so you could graduate debt-free while your classmates were drowning in student loans. And you know what I got in return? Brandon's mouth opened, but nothing came out. A son who's embarrassed of me. A son who thinks my life's accomplishments saving actual human lives are less impressive than shuffling money around for rich people. A son who's ordinary in all the ways that actually matter. Dad, you're twisting my words. No. You were clear enough. Now get out. Go plan your party with your sophisticated friends and your investor conversations and your $200,000 celebration of yourself. Do it without me. Without my money. Without my presence. Without my embarrassment. They left. The BMW's engine was whisper quiet, a far cry from my rumbling F-150. I watched them drive away, and I felt something in my chest crack open. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about 3-year-old Brandon, how he'd toddle around the fire station when I brought him to work, how he'd wear my too big helmet and tell everyone he was going to be a firefighter just like Daddy. I thought about 10-year-old Brandon, how proud he'd been when I gave a presentation at his career day, how he'd told his entire class that his dad was a hero. When did I stop being enough? I made my decision around 2 in the morning. The next day, I called my financial advisor, and yes, even small-time retired firefighters have financial advisors when they've been saving for 30 years. Jim, I need to liquidate some assets. Rob, we've talked about this. Your retirement fund is designed to last you another 30 years, maybe more. If you start pulling chunks out, I'm not pulling it out for myself. I'm making a strategic investment. Over the next 2 weeks, I did my homework. I made phone calls. I called in favors from people I'd saved over the years, and in 30 years of firefighting, you save a lot of people. A lot of people who remember. One of them was Marcus Chen, who owned the Harbor Club. Rob, how's retirement treating you? Can't complain, Marcus. Listen, I heard you have a big event booked for next month. A promotion party? Yeah, the Johnson party. Why? The name on the reservation is Brandon Johnson? That's right. Kid's got champagne taste and a beer budget, if you ask me. He's been calling every week trying to negotiate the price down. Wants the full VIP treatment, but can't quite swing the deposit. What if I told you I could guarantee payment in full, up front, but I need you to do something for me? Marcus owed me. I'd carried him out of his restaurant when the kitchen caught fire in '09. 3rd-degree burns on my arms, but I got him out. Name it. I told him my plan. There was a long pause. Rob, are you sure about this? Never been more sure of anything in my life. Consider it done. My second call was to Janet Reeves, event coordinator at the city's most prestigious catering company. I'd saved her daughter from a house fire when she was 6. The daughter was 22 now, graduating from college. Mrs. Reeves, I need the best catering team you have. Money's no object. For you, Rob, I'll handle it personally. The third call was to Tommy Rodriguez, who ran the best band in the city. We'd gone to high school together. I'd been the best man at his wedding. Tommy, remember that favor you said you owed me from when you helped with my kids' rehab bills? Rob, I'll never forget that. I'm collecting. One by one, I put the pieces in place. I paid for everything Brandon wanted. The venue, the catering, the band, the photographer, the flowers, the valet parking, the premium open bar, all of it. Every ridiculous, overpriced detail. The bill came to $187,000. I paid it in full. Brandon had no idea. As far as he knew, he was scraping together money from various investors, calling in his own favors, maybe even taking out a loan. I heard through the grapevine his cousin Sarah, who still talked to me, that he and Sienna were stressed, fighting about money, about the party, about everything. Good. The night of the party, I put on my best suit, the same one he'd insulted. I polished my shoes. I trimmed my beard. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 62-year-old man who'd spent his life running toward danger while others ran away, who'd pulled children from burning buildings, who'd performed CPR on strangers, who'd worked himself to exhaustion so his son could have a better life. I saw a man with nothing to be ashamed of. I wasn't on the guest list, of course. But Marcus had left my name at the door with strict instructions. The Harbor Club was stunning. Waterfront views, crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures. Brandon had gone all out. I saw him across the room in a tuxedo. Sienna in a dress that probably cost more than my truck. They were holding court with a circle of people in expensive suits and practiced smiles. He looked happy, confident, like he'd made it. I waited. The party progressed. Speeches were made. Brandon talked about his journey, his hard work, his vision. He thanked his amazing team and his supportive partner. He thanked the investors who believed in him. He didn't mention me once, not even in passing. Then came the moment I'd arranged. Marcus took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with dinner, I have a special announcement. This evening's festivities, the venue, the catering, the entertainment, all of it was made possible by a very generous benefactor. Someone who wanted to ensure this night was everything Brandon Johnson dreamed it would be. Brandon's smile widened. He probably thought it was one of his investors, someone trying to impress him. That benefactor is in the room tonight. Sir, would you please join me on stage? I started walking. People turned to look. I saw confusion on some faces. Who was this older man in the off-the-rack suit? But I kept my eyes on Brandon. The moment he recognized me, his face went white. I climbed the 3 steps to the small stage. Marcus handed me the microphone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Johnson. I'm Brandon's father. A ripple went through the crowd. Whispers. I saw Brandon's colleagues exchanging glances. This wasn't the fire chief they'd heard about. This was clearly a working-class man in a working-class suit. I paid for tonight, I continued. Every penny of it. The venue you're standing in. The food you're about to eat. The band playing behind me. The roses on your tables that were flown in from Ecuador. All of it. $187,000. Brandon started toward me, but Sienna grabbed his arm. Probably wise. What was he going to do? Drag his father off stage at his own party? I did this because my son asked me for help, and despite what he thinks, I'm not poor. I'm not unsuccessful. I simply made different choices about what matters. I looked directly at Brandon. For 30 years, I was a firefighter. I made $38,000 when I started. By the time I retired, I was making $62,000. Not much, by these standards. Polite laughter from the crowd. Brandon's face was crimson, but I saved money. I invested carefully. I lived below my means. I drove the same truck for 20 years. I stayed in the same house. I rebuilt engines for fun, instead of paying for expensive hobbies. And you know what? I retired with a portfolio worth just over $2 million. The whispers got louder. I saw shock on faces. Someone in the back said, "Holy shit." I could have told my son this. I could have explained that being ordinary doesn't mean being poor. That living simply doesn't mean living small. That the man who taught him to tie his shoes and ride a bike and treat people with respect actually knew what he was doing. I paused, letting it sink in. But he didn't ask. He assumed. He looked at my garage and my truck and my life, and he decided it wasn't good enough. That I wasn't good enough. That I'd embarrass him in front of his sophisticated friends. Brandon's head was down now. Sienna had let go of his arm. So I paid for this party. I gave him everything he wanted. And now, in front of everyone who matters to him, I'm going to tell you all exactly what kind of man my son is. Dad, please, Brandon's voice cracked. He's the kind of man who lied about his father's career because the truth wasn't impressive enough. He's the kind of man who told his girlfriend I was just a regular firefighter. Like saving lives for a living is something to be ashamed of. He's the kind of man who told me my life was ordinary and small and not worth celebrating. I set the microphone down on the podium with a solid thunk. Enjoy your party, Brandon. Enjoy the food I bought, the venue I reserved, the band I hired. Enjoy the celebration of yourself that you couldn't actually afford. And when you're done, when you go home tonight to your overpriced apartment with your status symbol girlfriend, I want you to think about something. I walked to the edge of the stage and looked him dead in the eye. Think about what kind of ordinary, small man has the resources to drop $200,000 on a party for a son who's ashamed of him. Think about what kind of life is actually worth being proud of. And think about whether the people in this room, the ones who measure success in dollars and deals and designer labels, whether they'd run into a burning building to save you. I descended the stairs. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Because I would've, I said over my shoulder. That's the difference between us. I walked out of the Harbor Club, out into the cool September night, and I drove my 20-year-old truck home to my ordinary house in my ordinary neighborhood, and I slept better than I had in months. The aftermath was predictable. Brandon called the next day. I didn't answer. He called again, and again. Texts piled up. Apologies, explanations, justifications. Sienna had broken up with him, apparently dating a man who publicly humiliated his firefighter father wasn't the look she was going for. Some of his colleagues had looked me up, found articles about fires I'd fought, people I'd saved. One of them, it turned out, had a brother I'd pulled from a car wreck in '98. The brother had been 8 years old then. He was a lawyer now. Brandon lost some of the respect he'd been so desperate to earn. Turns out, people who actually matter don't respect someone who disrespects the man who raised them. But I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it because my son needed to learn something I should have taught him years ago. That character isn't measured by your salary or your title or your zip code. It's measured by how you treat people when there's nothing in it for you. By whether you run toward danger or away from it. By whether you're ashamed of where you came from or grateful for the people who got you there. 3 weeks after the party, there was a knock on my garage door. I was installing a new distributor cap. Brandon stood there, not in a suit this time. Jeans and a t-shirt. He looked younger, more like the boy I remembered. "Can I come in?" I gestured to the stool. He sat. "I've been an asshole," he said finally. "Yes, you have." I let the money and the job and the lifestyle become more important than the people who actually matter. I was so focused on proving I'd made it that I forgot where I came from, who I came from. I didn't respond. Just kept working on the distributor. You were right. About all of it. Those people at the party, half of them don't even remember my name. But you remember everything. Every scraped knee, every little league game, every school play. You were there. That's what fathers do. Good fathers, he corrected. Not all of them. I work with guys who haven't talked to their dads in years. Some of them never knew their dads at all. And here I am, with a father who'd run into burning buildings for strangers, who'd drop 200 grand to teach me a lesson, who'd sacrifice everything for me, and I told him he was embarrassing. His voice broke on the last word. I set down my wrench and looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw shame there. Genuine shame. But also something else, something I hadn't seen in years. I saw the boy who used to follow me around the fire station. "What do you want, Brandon?" "I want to learn how to rebuild an engine," he said. "I want to spend Sundays watching football in your living room. I want to ask your advice about things that actually matter instead of just asking for money." I want to introduce you to my colleagues as my father, the firefighter, the hero, the man who saved lives, and be proud of that introduction. What about Sienna? Gone. Turns out she was more interested in the image than the person. Good riddance. What about your job? I'm good at it. I'm keeping it. But I'm also remembering that it's just a job. It doesn't define me. Or it shouldn't. Anyway, I picked the wrench back up, turned back to the engine. Hand me that socket set. He did. And for a while, we worked in silence. Just a father and son, grease on our hands. No words needed. Dad? He said eventually. Thank you. For what? For caring enough to spend $200,000 teaching me I was being an idiot. Most fathers would have just written their kids off. I thought about it, I admitted. But then I realized you weren't raised to be this way. Something happened along the road. The people you surrounded yourself with, the culture you bought into, the values of that world. It got into your head, so you burned it out. I smiled despite myself. Occupational hazard. When there's a fire, I put it out. Even when it's your own kid on fire? Especially then. We finished the distributor cap as the sun set through the garage door, painting everything in orange and gold. Brandon asked questions about the engine, actually listened to the answers. He told me about a project at work, but this time he explained it in a way I could understand, without the jargon and condescension. He was trying. That's all I ever wanted. Not perfection, just effort, just the willingness to be better. As he left that night, he paused at his car he'd traded in the BMW for a sensible Toyota, I noticed. Dad, I'm sorry I ever made you feel small. Your life isn't small. It's the biggest, most important life I've ever known. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I love you. I love you too, son. He drove away, and I stood in my garage, in my ordinary neighborhood, in my small life that had somehow produced a son worth saving. And I thought about all those years ago, holding a newborn Brandon in the hospital, promising him I'd give him everything. I thought I meant money, education, opportunities. But what I'd actually given him was something more valuable. A foundation strong enough that when he lost his way, he could find his way back. That's what fathers do. We build things that last. Even when they catch fire, we rebuild them. Even when they burn, we save them. Because that's love. Not the easy kind that writes checks and smooths the way and removes all obstacles. The hard kind that lets people fall, that teaches lessons, that says I love you enough to let you fail and learn and grow. The kind of love that's willing to spend everything, money, pride, comfort, to save someone from themselves. I turned off the garage light and went inside to my ordinary house, made myself an ordinary dinner, and sat in my ordinary living room. And I was grateful for every ordinary moment of it. Because ordinary, I'd learned, is just another word for real. And real is what matters. Real is what lasts. Real is what burns away everything else until all that's left is what you truly value. My son had been through the fire, and he'd come out stronger. That made me richer than any bank account ever could.